After all the mainstream economists and the media predicting and betting on the rate cuts starting from as early as April this year, we saw Stats Canada dropped a bombshell report about the inflation reported in the month of December. And guess what? It has gone up to 3.4% from 3.1% that was reported back in November. And the reason is because things are not looking good, guys. I've been reporting on this channel that the inflationary pressures will remain in the economy because there are some obvious signs that you can look at it. You don't need me to tell you. A fifth grader can tell you that inflation is going to remain higher. Like government spending, if you have been watching my videos, I've been telling you the video after video that the fiscal deficit is one of the major reason of inflation in the economy. So if the government is continuously running fiscal deficit and that deficit is financed by the bond market, that money is going into economy directly and it's being spent away. So if the money is being printed out of thin air and being spent away, that is going to be inflationary, okay? And that deficit projection is not slowing down, guys. I'm going to show you the chart later on, so stay tuned till the end. So if the government spending is continuously increasing, then that spending is going to be taxed upon us. Carbon tax over carbon tax over carbon tax. Things are going to get expensive. When you make fuel expensive and everything gets transported, is going to get expensive because of that, right? Like food. So the food inflation is continue to remain higher because the fuel is getting expensive, right? And don't forget what's happening in the Middle East. So Red Sea crisis, it is rerouting the global shipping route. Rather than going through the Suez Canal, now it has to go down all the way to the South Africa and then come back up into the Europe. That will increase the shipping cost big time, okay? Now, let's get back to the economy. So a lot of economists and the mainstream media is reporting it as unexpected inflation rise. I don't know why, because all of these obvious signs, a fifth grader can tell you the inflation is going to get higher. So if the inflation is going to be sticky, if it is going to stay above 3%, why the hell Bank of Canada has to cut rates? Explain to me. Put your comment down below if you have a different theory. The inflation is one of the major mandate for central banks. They don't worry about your mortgage cost. They don't care about it, okay? All they care about is price stability and maximum employment. So unemployment, that is something of their concern. So right now it is around 5.5%, okay? If that number goes up, then it's a different story. Then they may have to cut rates to stimulate economy so that the jobs can be created and they can bring the unemployment number down. Right now it's 5.5%, so it is kind of in acceptable range. So if that remains at that same level, if the inflation remains at above 3%, why they have to cut rates down? I don't get it. I don't know why these mainstream economists and the financial media is keep putting this narrative out. One logical explanation is because the Bay Street, they want it. They want it because the cheaper rates, the cheaper money is good for their asset prices. So they want their asset prices to go up, which is why, of course, all the major economists and the Bay Street guys are asking for rate cuts, okay? And if you look at the economy, the way the economic growth is reported in financial media, that is quite misleading, guys. They all talk about aggregate spending covered in the number of GDP. So if you import 2 million people in the last 2 years, guess what's going to happen with the aggregate spending? It's going to go up anyway. So if the GDP is looking good, quote unquote good, while we import 2 million people in this country, of course, that's a fake number. That is not productivity. If you want to measure productivity of a nation, you measure this by GDP per capita, which means at a per person level, how much we as a nation is producing. And when I say producing, that means goods and services, not just pure spending, because you can increase a lot of employment in the public sector, which means government employed. They're not producing anything. They're not producing any goods and services. So that's not productivity increased. Okay. So in order to measure a nation's productivity, you have to calculate GDP per capita, which means you actually take the entire GDP and divide it by the actual population. That way you can see how much we at a per person level producing to be more productive in this country. And by the way, if you look at the GDP per capita, that has been stagnant for so many years. And the projection from OECD is telling us that Canada is going to be one of the worst performing compared to advanced economies, because the GDP per capita is going to get decreased because we are growing population exponentially, but we're not increasing productivity that way. Who is to be blamed here? I would definitely blame Trudeau government, because when Trudeau took power back in 2014, the fiscal deficit was around $256 billion. Now it has gone doubled, around $450 billion. It's not slowing down. If you look at this chart, that shows you each time they project something, but the actual spending surpassed that by a big number. Look at 2020, 2021. And even now, when there is no COVID related spending, that fiscal deficit still running hot. So if that trend continues, mark my words, inflation is not going to go down. And all of that spending is done because they anticipate productivity growth. But if the productivity is not growing while you keep spending money like a drunken sailor, that is a stagflationary situation, guys. Okay, so if you look at this chart, that shows you the GDP per capita, and we have been sitting flat since 2018. Okay, and the projection is also not looking good either. One hand, you have high inflation that is sticking around, you have population growing like crazy, and then you have government spending also like drunken sailor, which is not going to stimulate growth in the economy in the real terms. That is going to be a stagflationary situation. Yes, the unemployment shoots up. I don't see any reason why Bank of Canada has to cut rates. The base rate will always want it because it props up their asset prices. But from a pure economic terms, there is no need to cut rates unless inflation comes down, remains low, or unemployment goes up and there is a big risk of longer recessions. Those are the two main reasons I see that will push Bank of Canada to cut rates and stimulate the economy so we can keep the unemployment data low. But hey, I'm just a man on the internet. You let me know what you think about this. Put your comments down below. And if you have any questions, also put them in the comment section. And if you don't agree with my analysis, also challenge me in the comment section. I would like to be challenged because that's how I improve myself, by learning from the community like yourself. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.